Welcome everybody to the workshop. Let me introduce myself a bit. This is Dr. Chris Kwan. I've just got my PhD degree from the University of Hong Kong. My I work in applied linguistics, and specifically my PhD thesis, is about writing-centered peer tutoring. That is how university students conduct peer writing consultations with one another in the university setting. I'm interested in discourse analysis, grammatics, and second language writing. Um, I also have a range of hobbies like working out and singing karaoke, right? Um, so that's a bit about myself. So today's workshop is about how to write an email request using the right or the most appropriate tone in academic and professional setting. Okay, I would like to begin by stating two intended learning outcomes first. I hope that by the end of today's workshop, you should be able to, number one, identify some key features of appropriate email requests. I will refer to these three areas of knowledge during the workshop. Number one, knowledge of email formats. Number two, knowledge of request making. And number three, knowledge of the email recipient. I'll, I will, I'll focus more on the second and the third domain, that is knowledge of request making and knowledge of the email recipient throughout the whole workshop. I will elaborate on these two areas later. Okay. Another intended learning outcome is that you will be able to apply the key features that we covered in the workshop in your email requests when you are writing an email to ask for someone to do something for you. So here comes the workshop outline. I'll begin by giving you some background information about why it is important to have this workshop. And then I will have one slide to show you the key concepts that I would like you to remember throughout and even after the workshop. And then we'll have three activities. Hopefully we will have time to cover all the three activities. We will analyze some email samples, and we will learn, we will also try to rewrite some inappropriately written email requests. And finally, you will be able to work on your, hopefully you will be able to work on your own email requests. And then towards the end of the workshop, I will do a summary. So before I begin, I would like to let you know that the whole workshop is actually research informed. That is, the things that I will mention in the workshop are actually based on research findings and also the literature on pragmatics. So throughout the workshop, I'm going to show you how what the research findings are in relation to how to write an appropriate email request. So let me give you some background information. So as we know, English is a common language because of globalization and internationalization. Let me take the example of university studies. At universities, you'll be able to use English to talk to people, not just from the local, but also people from the international context, people from the globe. And in particular, email is a very common way of communicating with one another outside the class time. When you are, for example, when you email your friends or your lecturer to ask for more information about the course or the work or your assignment, and requesting is a very common act that we will do every day. Like what I have just mentioned, we usually ask people to do something for us. So it is important to have some knowledge of how to make an appropriate request and to be able to make requests appropriately. So so altogether, these 3 points form the backdrop of today's workshop. That is, we are going to learn how to write an email request appropriately in English. So before I move on, I would like you to think about um, one thing. Do you ever have the experience of writing email requests in English? So, and in what situations? Yeah, Jason, it seems that you have some ideas, right? Thank you, Jason. Jason just mentioned that very often we are, I mean, students have to send emails to ask for their lecturers to do something for them, like sending students PowerPoint files or any other course materials for their learning. But at the same time, some students may not be so confident in producing email requests using an appropriate tone. I think Jason has made a very good point, and that's why we have the lecture today. So here are some situations that I can actually think of, or actually I have experienced. I experienced when I was a student, when I was a university student. Very often we have to send email requests to ask for, like what Jason said, some course materials, asking for some assignment consultations, or asking for feedback from teachers. So these are just some examples of writing an email requests. That is, you ask your teacher, or in the future workplace, you ask your boss or your colleagues to do something for you. So because request making is very common, not just in academia, but also in the workplace, it is important to have some degree of email literacy. Here, I'm referring to your ability or our ability to write appropriate email requests as part of our language proficiency. I have another question for you to think about. Actually, right before the workshop, I already asked one or two in-person participants whether it's easy or difficult to write an email request. And Jason just told me that sometimes it was a bit difficult for non-native speakers of English to produce email requests because they worry that they are not using the most appropriate tone, right? Or are there any other difficulties that you can think of other than thinking about the tone all the time? Or maybe this is the question that you can think about. But what I can tell you from the research finding is that writing email requests is actually an area of difficulty for learners of English. Some research studies have identified some dissatisfaction. I mean, those scholars email those scholars asked or invited some native English speakers and asked them to evaluate a number of sample emails written by non-native speakers of English, mostly students. And those non-native English-speaking lecturers found that actually learners were not very polite, and they even used and they mostly used an inappropriate tone when they are talking to the lecturer. And the students, and may I draw your attention to the second point that actually some students are not recognizing that when you are asking your lecturer to do something extra for you, right? Students have to be very careful with their tone, with their use of language, and choice of content. But some email writers were not aware of that. So, sometimes the lecturers were felt some lecturers felt that actually the students were not polite enough, and they were seen as unintentionally rude. So, from the studies, actually, we can also see that the email recipients, those who are reading our emails, do form some sort of impressions of the sender. Because as what I've just said before, the the lecturers in those email studies did have some sort of negative opinions towards those students who are not able to write emails using an appropriate tone. Here I'm trying to show you an example. This is from a professional context in the workplace. One of your friend, imagine you have a friend called Edna, and she has been promoted to senior marketing executive, and she would like to have a bigger office. Can you take a look at the way how she communicated with her boss? And could you please tell me how you feel about the email? Jason, you are not it seems that you are not happy with the tone, or something wrong in the message, right? Can you say a bit more about this? Thank you, Professor Story. Yes, I agree that actually the tone or let me put it this way, the choice of language and also the choice of content have made the email problematic. And Professor Story, could I ask you that whether you think the word please is appropriate or not? Because you are a native English speaker. Thank you, Professor Story. Actually, well, the reason why I would like to draw your attention to the word please is that, as what Professor Story said, usually it is seen as a politeness marker. It is used to signal some sort of politeness to the reader. But if you put the word please here at the front position, it sounds like a direct command rather than a polite request. I actually have a slide talking about this. Let's just come back to this point later in the workshop. Okay. So here comes some key concepts to learn because it is so important to be able to use the appropriate tone in a way to avoid offending the reader, right? Avoid offending your teacher, and as that's why we need today's workshop. And in today's workshop, I will show you what I'm trying to show you is to use your is to craft your email request in a wise manner so that you can achieve two goals. Number one, you have your own goal to achieve. That is, if you would like to ask your teacher for feedback, um, um, you hope your email can achieve that purpose effectively, right? But at the same time, you need to maintain a good relationship with your teacher. Then the choice of language and the choice of content will be very useful. If you have that kind of knowledge, that will help you a lot in making an effective email request to your teacher. So I would like you to remember this diagram after the workshop. I'm proposing that email literacy should consist of three areas of knowledge. Knowledge of email formats, that is I'm referring to address terms like when to use doctors, when to use the titles doctors, when to use the word professor appropriately. and sometimes even the closing of your email. Another area of knowledge would be knowledge of request making. That is how you select the most appropriate language and content in your email requests so that you can communicate your message effectively. And the third area of knowledge would be knowledge of the email recipient. And that is your relationship with the reader. Like, for example, in the academic setting, there is a power hierarchy, right? Teachers are at a higher position than us. So we need to maintain a cautious tone when we are talking to our teachers. So that's what I mean by knowledge of the email recipient. I know there are some English major students here, and and for those English major students, if you do pragmatics, actually I'm referring. Knowledge. I'm using the term knowledge request making to refer to the concept of pragma linguistic competence, and this area of knowledge of the email recipient, for this domain, I'm referring to social pragmatic competence. But because today we have a number of non-English major students, I'm trying to avoid very complicated terms in applied linguistics. So I'm choosing some simple terms so that you can understand what we need to have, what sort of knowledge we need to have in an easy manner. So today's workshop, in today's workshop, I focus more on making requests in the academic setting because it is more relevant or to your immediate concern because you are all studying at universities, right? But hopefully, the skills, the selection of language and content can also be useful for you to make requests in your future workplaces. So let's just move on to the first activity. Could you please take out your the other set of handout? So let me give you some background information about the activity first. There was a study. The two Taiwanese scholars investigated email politeness, and the scholars invited 6 native English speakers to evaluate 44 email requests written by non-native speakers of English. And on your handout, actually, there are 4 email requests: email A, B, C, and D. 2 of the emails were seen as very polite, and one was evaluated as neither very polite nor very polite. And the remaining one was very impolite. Could you please take a look at the email and categorize them the 4 emails into very impolite, neither very impolite nor very polite, and very polite. Have a look at the email first and try to fill in the table on page 1 of your handout. I'm just walking around to check the answers of all the participants and in-person participants. They're still reading the emails, but it seems that different people have different judgments of which email is, say, for example, very impolite or which emails are very polite. Seems that everybody has different answers. So for the online participants, if you have any thoughts about the 4 emails, you can put them in the chat box so that I can read and try to see what you think about the emails. And should I give you all 2 more minutes to read the emails before we begin? And should we continue our activity? So I'm going to show the answers in a minute. I'm going to show you the emails to explain why each email is considered very polite or very impolite in a minute. But first of all, let me show you the answers first. So email B is very impolite, and email C neither very impolite nor very polite. And the most polite emails would be A and D. I will ask you to comment on the emails very soon. So, have you got the answers correct? No. It wasn't me who make up all the answers. It was these are actually the findings from the study. I mean, the two scholars asked the native English speaking lecturers to evaluate the emails, the 4 emails. And these are the opinions. These were the opinions of the 4 opinions of the professors. The professors felt that, okay, say, for example, emails A and D were the most polite, and email B were very impolite. So let's just have a look at email A first. How many of you how many of you feel that it is actually very polite? Can I have your hand, please? Okay, Aaron. So Maggie. Okay. So could I invite you to explain, maybe Aaron first, to say why email A is very polite?
Because the writer put her request in a form of like asking like questioning.
Asking like questioning.
Yeah, and the writer also lists down all the requirements. And the writer also use the vocabulary like could I and I wonder. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Maggie, do you have something to add?
I also think some polite sentences like I wonder, blah blah blah, and should I, blah blah. I think it's polite.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay, let me recap what Aaron and Maggie said. There are some use of polite language, like I wonder, blah blah blah, and also Aaron said the email was very specific because the email sender or actually the student has explained has explained why he or she would like to have a meeting or a consultation. So let me show you why, from the study, why the email was perceived as very polite. I think you have got I think both Aaron and Maggie got the point that the use of I wonder if makes the whole sentence very, I mean that the tone of the sentence very appropriate. Let me tell you that I wonder if as is actually an instance of a biclausal sentence. Okay, we can use this type of biclausal sentence. I wonder if to make our to soften the tone of the request. Okay, but other than the use of I wonder if, I mean this type of sentence starter to begin our request, we can also have the use of modal verb could, right? Could here as you can see here it is in past tense, but it doesn't have to do with time. It has more to do with politeness. Usually this kind of past tense verb, past tense modal verb is associated or it has more to do with politeness. I would also like to draw your attention to the word just. Just is actually a downtoner. Downtoner, or the word downtoner means that we use it to soften the tone. We don't want to present our request with full force, right? We want to make the tone more, negotiable, or what Aaron said, like kind of asking a question, asking whether something is possible instead of saying that, oh, I do this, okay, go and do this, go and do that, right? So altogether, you used, I wonder if this type of sentence structure, we can use modal verb could and also the down toner to, we can combine all these linguistic elements to make the whole request more, I mean, more negotiable in terms of tone. Can I also draw your attention to the use of could I? Actually, in the literature, I mean, in the literature on pragmatics, actually, this strategy is called query preparatory. But if you can't remember the term, you can just remember the use of could I, right? Again, could I, here, could I is in a negotiating tone, right? Is asking the lecturer or asking the professor to see whether something is possible instead of saying, you go and do this, you go do this, do that. Professor, sorry, just to make a point that, 2 points actually. Prop in is actually, here, could I prop in to see you before, during, and or after? Prop in is also kind of like a down toner because it is used, it is an informal usage of words. And then we can use, and the purpose of propping here is actually making this tone soft, softer to the reader. But at the same time, Professor Story has made another point that the email could be improved if there is a salutation at the end, right? And also at the beginning, the email sender should address the reader or the professor, like dear Dr. X or dear Professor X. So let's just look at email B. Email B is actually was actually perceived as very impolite. But do you know why? This is a bit difficult because it has something to do with the difference between Chinese and English. Well, do the online participants know why? Yes, Jace, yes, Chris, you have something to say, right? Thank you, Chris. I think Chris has pointed out 2 things that are two choices of language that make the email very impolite. That is the use of I want and the word expecting, or its basic form expect, right? The 2, what I think what Chris meant was that the use of I want to and expecting has made the email very demanding, right? It seems that the student was in a very superior situation. So from the research literature, actually, I want to do something. I want is actually a want statement. But again, if you can't remember this terminology, you can just remember the structure I want. And also the word expect. These are not very appropriate when you're writing emails in email requests in English. Let me tell you why. There are 2 studies talking about this point. I'm showing you some examples to let you know, to give you an idea of how email senders might use I want to make their requests. Like, for example, if you can meet me tomorrow before 2 p.m., I want to see you. Or this one, I want to change my tutorial group. I want to know when I'm going to do the exam. In Chinese, I want is perfectly acceptable, right? It is because in Chinese, the use of I want, as I've put the Chinese characters here, is considered as very polite or quite soft in tone. But unfortunately, that is not the case in English. You can see the sentence begins with I, right? That means I, the perspective. I mean, I is is a very important person. The whole sentence seems to highlight the email sender's personal desires, right? Rather than whether or not the recipient will comply with the request. The use of I want structure not only highlights the requesters or the students' personal desires, but also the recipient's obligation to fulfill what the student wanted to do, right? So actually, there is this kind of implied meaning in English for the structure I want, and that can explain why the structure I want you to do something, like I want you to do something, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. That is not very appropriate in English. So if you are sending in the future, if you are sending an email request to your teacher or to someone who is senior than you, it would be good to avoid the use of "I want" because the reader may find it very impolite. So let's just move on to the third email. This is not very polite, but at the same time not very impolite. I would like to draw your attention to the sentence structure, please. Please give me a ride on April the 3rd to the airport. The whole clause is actually an imperative clause prefaced by the word please. What we mean by imperative clause would be a kind of sentence structure that we are asking someone to do something in a very direct manner, right? Says, for example, sit down, stand up, give me this, give me that. Okay, these are imperative clauses, and here the use of please plus imperative. Here the use of please plus an imperative clause. Again, I would like to remind you that this type of structure is not very may not always be appropriate in English, as what Professor Story just mentioned. Remember the email about asking for a bigger office at the beginning of the workshop, right? The use of please before an imperative, like please email the syllabus of the course, blah blah blah, during this second semester, or please let me know if you received my assignment. As I said, the use of although the use of the word please is actually a politeness marker, it is not necessarily more appropriate because it can still be read as a direct command, right? Or actually a command, although you phrase it or you word it in a polite manner. So what I mean is, if you are trying to write an email to your teacher, your professor, or someone who is senior than you, it would again be a good idea to avoid the use of this structure because it can be felt or perceived as a kind of like a direct command. What I said is actually supported by a study. In the study, actually, a group of native English speaking lecturers were asked to evaluate a number of emails, and those lecturers mentioned that, look at this, although the email uses please and thank you, the tone is what I would expect from a supervisor or a manager, right? A supervisor or manager it looks to be like an order phrased as a request. And that echoes what Professor Story and what we think about the use of the sentence structure please plus imperative. Okay, finally, look at email D. Again, here, I wonder, I think you know why it is also considered very polite. That is the use of I wonder, right? This kind of biclausal sentence. I wonder if you could do this. I wonder if you could do that. Okay, I'm moving a bit away from activity one because I would like to show you some grammar of polite requests that are, okay, thank you, Professor Story. Thank you. I'm going to show you some sentence structures that you can use. If you don't want to use the word I wonder if all the time. In the coming slides, I'm I'm going to show you some politeness marker, politeness openers. I hope after the workshop, you can remember the term, well, there is a concept of politeness openers, because these are very, very, very useful sentence structures that you can use to make your request, like to your professor, right? I'm going to show you one by one. Of course, you can say, I wonder if you could help me to fill out this form, or simply say, could you help me to fill out this form? You can say, you can use those polite openers, but if you want some varieties, you can say, could you possibly help me to fill out this form? Here, the word possibly also functions as a kind of like a down toner to make your tone to soften your tone. Could you possibly help me to fill this form? Or is there any chance that you could make a doctor's appointment for me? Is there any chance that you could do something for me? Or will it be okay to hand the report in tomorrow? Will it be okay to do something? From the first three sentence structures, you can see that actually the requests are presented in a question, in a negotiating or what Aaron said, questioning tone. They are presented as questions rather than help me fill in this form, give this to me, go home, do this, do that. They are presented as questions in order to ask the sender or the teacher or the professor whether it is possible to do something, whether it is okay to do something. So look at the fourth one. I wondered if it might be possible or okay to do something. Again, the I wonder if structure. And sometimes you can put the structure, the sentence structure, I wondered if, towards the end of the request. The difference is that if you put I wondered if blah blah blah, if you explain, you give a reason why you would like to seek advice first. You would like to ask someone to do something first before you present your request. We will come back to this point later. So you can see from this slide, rather than representing our requests with full force, like do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, we can ask. Well, we can use a few more words to make our requests more, more appropriate in terms of tone, right? In order to create a more negotiating or more kind of like tentative tone. I've just shown you some use of polite openers, but if you want to make the tone even more tentative, you can begin with an apology, right? I'm sorry to bother you, but blah blah blah. I've given you two examples here. Sometimes when we make a request, we would like to apologize. That's because one of the reasons for apologizing is that, as what I've said at the beginning of the workshop, when we are asking people to do something for us, that person will be spending extra time and effort to do what we want them to do. Like our teachers, we need extra time, extra efforts to read your essay, your draft, or your assignments. You are taking away their time. So in order to minimize this type of imposition, right, we can present our request with an apology first, in order to show not only to show some sort of politeness, but also to be a bit tactful about your language use. They are doing something. They are spending time doing. I mean, the teachers are spending time doing something for us. So we are acknowledging that, and we would like to begin our request with an apology. And there's even one more thing you might want to remember. If you can even put a word like an intensifier, as shown in the example. Sometimes if you even want to make the tone even tentative or make the apologizing tone more sincere, you can use "I'm very sorry" or "I'm really sorry." I'm really sorry to bother you, but um, I wondered if you have time for an assignment consultation. Um, I actually have a small activity, but because of the time, I know it's 4 o'clock now. Maybe I will leave this to you later. I can definitely show you share with you the answers after the workshop. But because of the time limit here, maybe let me just move on because I have another activity for you. So so far I've talked a lot about the choice of language. Now let me move on to talk about the choice of content. The choice of content. I will skip these two because we don't have enough time. I will share this PowerPoint with you late after the workshop. Okay, I would like to refer to the two very polite emails again. I mean emails A and D, right? You can see in the two emails, the requests themselves have been underlined, right? But also there are a lot of sentences that haven't been underlined. My question is, can the non-underlined sentences be deleted from the emails? And if not, what functions do those sentences serve in the emails? Let's just look at email A. Can I simply say, I wondered if I could talk to you for just a few minutes about my course selection for the winter term? Look at the sentence highlighted here. If I remove this sentence, does it affect the clarity of the email? So if I don't remove this sentence here, what is the function of this sentence? I'm concerned about preparation for prelims, blah, blah, blah. Here, the student is actually providing a justification or a reason why he or she is making such a request. Here the student is telling the lecturer that he or she actually has a purpose for the consultation. That's why he or she wanted to have a consultation. So providing a justification or reason can be something that you might consider including in your email requests. And again, in email D, actually the highlighted part serves the same purpose. Here the student is actually trying to seek advice from his or her friend. But before you can see before the request, actually you can see that the student spent a paragraph describing what his or her difficulties were. So again, this is the strategy of providing a justification or a reason in order to convince the reader that I have such a necessity to make a request. My request is actually legitimate. Other than providing a reason or a justification, you can see in email D actually right at the beginning, actually the email sender also said something about what the email recipient did previously. Like, thanks very much for your article. Like, you did a great thing. So, do you know why the email sender chose to say such words like "thank you" or "thank you, the reader"? Do you know the purpose of this, of these two, of the highlighter part here? again, it doesn't have to do with reasoning, but with rapport building. Rapport means you build a good rapport building means how you manage, how you create a good relationship with the reader. A good relationship with the reader, right? There are two strategies. Number one, expression of gratitude. Gratitude. Thanks very much. Thank you for. While you say thank you to acknowledge what your friend did to you previously, especially in relation to their help or kind of assistance. And other than gratitude, appreciation, showing appreciation is also important. Like you did a great thing. I like what you did. Blah blah blah. So altogether, there is some sort of rapport building in this email request. Okay. Because time is running out, I just wanted to show you this slide. This slide is actually showing an email in which a student is actually requesting an extension of a paper. Or in other words, the student is actually asking the professor or the lecturer to see whether it would be possible to extend the assignment deadline. Look at this. The request is actually here in the underlined sentence. But I would like to draw your attention to this sentence highlighted in gray. I'm Lisa in your English writing class. What function does such a sentence serve in the email? Why did the student? I mean, why the student begins with "I'm Lisa in your English writing class"? This is very important because it has the function of self-introduction. Remember that a lecturer teaches a number of classes in a semester. They can't remember all the students within a class. So it is very important to help your lecturer refresh their memory on students, right? It would be useful to say, "Oh, I'm Chris from your tutorial group." But let's just look at things critically. This sentence, the kind of self-introduction can still be improved if it could be more specific by pointing out which English writing class the student Lisa is in, right? Given the name of the tutor of the writing class, or even some course information like the time, date, and venue would also be useful to help your lecturer refresh their memory of who you are, right? Which class you are talking about. So I just wanted to show you one more strategy. Again, this is another email showing you how we can make a request to ask for an extension of an assignment, right? Here, the writer is saying, I'm fully aware that it is very important for me to hand in my current assignment on time. Do you know why we have to include such a sentence? What's the function behind? Sorry, Aaron? Self-reflection. Yes, I like the word self-reflection of the student's own mistake. Actually, I'm using the term disarmer, DISARMER. But self-reflection is actually a good word. That is, the student knows, okay, it is my obligation, it is my responsibility to be to submit my assignment on time. It is my responsibility. I understand it is my fault, FAULT. It is my fault. But unfortunately, for some reason, I'm so sorry for asking for an assignment extension. So here the email shows you the strategy of disarmer, right? Again, I'm very sorry if this causes you any difficulties. Here, the speaker is apologizing. Note that apologizing is also a strategy for rapport building because, as I said, you wanted to present your request, but at the same time, you would like to maintain a good relationship with the reader, right? You don't want to upset your readers. So an apology would be useful. Okay, let me quickly summarize what we have learned from the first activity. As I said, you remember the email literacy, the diagram of email literacy, right? We have 3 domains of knowledge to remember when we are making a request. For the second one, knowledge of request making, I'm referring to the choice of language, like politest opener. You can use politest opener to make your request more tentative in tone. You can carefully select content, like providing a justification or a reason, like presenting an apology, in order to make your email request more, more appropriate in terms of tone. You also need knowledge of the email recipient, right? Here, I'm referring specifically to writing an email to your professors, to your teachers. We know, and also some of you mentioned that we need to be more careful. We use a careful tone when we are speaking to someone who has a higher status than us, right? So we have that kind. It would be useful to have that kind of awareness or sensitivity of who we are speaking to. I don't think I will have time for the third activity of this. The third, before I move on to the second activity, I would like, maybe I will. Let me mention a bit about the third activity. On your handout, actually, you can see a number of 3 request situations in total. I would really like to give you some individual feedback on your email requests, but unfortunately, I don't think we will have time in class for this purpose. I will make it more optional, however. I will encourage you to pick up one of these situations on your handout, page 3 of your handout, and then you use your HKSYU email account, or you use your an account that you commonly use to draft a sample email request. You can email it to me, and I can give you some individual feedback. So that's for activity 3. And I would really love to do activity 2 with you. Okay, let me show you the situation. There was an undergraduate English major student writing to a professor. The professor's name is called Dr. Phil Glenwright. The student was writing because he or she couldn't attend the tutorial and would like to attend another tutorial class. But the outcome was, as you can see from the diagram, the professor was very unhappy. Not only that, Dr. Glenwright even complained to the students program coordinator by saying, "This is how your students write emails." This is an authentic case. Happened some time ago when I was well, of course, I wasn't the student, right? It was my it was someone who I met in during my undergraduate years. And anyway, that was the outcome. So maybe well, at first I was planning for a pair work activity, but maybe because we don't have enough time. I will maybe you can work on it individually, okay, and try to identify. Try to identify what's wrong in the email. you can think about the choices of language and content, and also other components like the address terms, and also what Professor Story just said previously. This kind of salutation, right? Can I just give you a few minutes to think about the email first? Okay, would you like me to start now, or you would like to have 1 to 2 more minutes to read and identify the issues in the email? And by the way, the student's assistant told me that actually you guys are free to leave at 4:30. I will finish the workshop at 4:40. But if you have if you have a class after 4:30, or have some sort other kinds of commitment after 4:30, you may leave at 4:30, right? But just to let you know, I'll finish 10 minutes later, 10 minutes late, because we started 10 minutes late. Okay, well, so great that a number of you, I mean, the in-person participants are working on tasks, and you have even identified a number of issues. Maybe I have prepared some feedback generated by ChatGPT. That is, I actually copied the email to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to generate some feedback to me. Okay, I will show you what ChatGPT said in a minute. Well, you can. Well, this is a kind. This is also a self-learning strategy that you can try. If you are sending an email to, sending an email request to somebody, you can use ChatGPT as well to get some AI generated feedback. I'll show you how to make good use of those feedback in a minute. But first of all, I would like to hear how you feel about the email. And may I ask some in-person participants to share your opinions, your suggestions with us? Thank you, Jason, for a very rich feedback on the email. Actually, Jason has identified a number of things, like the student should have included a self-introduction, right? Who the student that is, who the student is, right? Which class his or her is from. And Jason mentioned a very good use of sentence structure. I'm terribly sorry to bother you, right? The student should apologize, right, for the request. I'm terribly TERRIBLY. I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but I would blah blah blah. And then the reason could be more concrete by saying why it is important to catch the train. And also, there are some, in terms of content, there are some more sentences that can be added, like to show sincerity, to show the student is actually sincere. Like, may I borrow the course materials from you later? Blah blah blah. Chris has also got some thought, right? So I like the second point that here the student has made a request. Can I change the class on that day? As I mentioned right at the during the workshop, we can consider using some polite openers to make the tone even more tentative. Like, I wonder if it be possible for me to attend another class instead of the original one on the 2nd of October. Aaron, do you have something to say? It seems that you've made a lot of annotations.
I think I will attend another tutorial class. It's an inappropriate expression. So sounds more like a notification rather than a requirement. It may change to will it be possible for me to attend another tutorial class on October 2nd? Yeah.
you. Again, the choice of language is problematic. Like I will attend another tutorial class on the 2nd of October. It's a bit assertive, but you are negotiating, right? You are discussing with your lecturer to say whether it is a possible option. You're not presenting it as your plan. I just wonder if, okay, Man and Maggie, do you have things to add about the
Maybe start their green right to this is a student to professor. The student need to their professor green right and um, and the final the students need to write his name or or some details for he and the the last sentence, please give me your reply soon. I think is incorrect. It's direct it is implied for to professor.
Maggie, did you have anything to add? Okay, Man mentioned a very good point about the use of address terms. If you look at the beginning, dear Glenwright, is it appropriate? Dear Glenwright? No, a lot of the in-person participants are saying no, right? Why? You remember what I said about the name of the lecturer? The name of the lecturer is Dr. Phil Glenwright, right? But here the students only mention Dr. Glenwright. Where is the title? It's gone, right? The title is gone. In order to improve the problem, I think Man has made a good point that we should say, dear Dr. Glenwright. Sometimes it can be tricky to distinguish first name and last name for names of native English speakers. For names of native English speakers, the last word is usually is usually the surname. So Dr. Phil Glenwright. Phil is the first name. Glenwright is the last name, or what we usually call the surname, right? So here it should be dear Dr. Glenwright. And the salutation, the closing is missing, right? It's missing. And Man also mentioned another point about please give me your reply soon, right? As I've said right at the beginning, if you use please plus this kind of imperatives, that can make the reader feel like a direct command, right? Rather than a sincere request. And some years ago, I also presented this email to a native English speaker, and he also commented that this tone of this kind of please plus imperative, the sentence structure a bit awkward, right? So, all right. This is what I've just mentioned about the use of ChatGPT. Actually, I know you have an institutional account, but if you try to Google online, you can also find a number of free ChatGPT tools, right? This is the one that I found, right? Unfortunately, this one could only allow users to ask 2 questions, right? But anyway, I know we don't have enough time, so I have already generated. I used the AI tool that I've shown you to generate some feedback on the email. Let me maybe distribute the feedback to the in-person participants. As I've said a few minutes ago, I'm going to show you how we can take advantage of the feedback generated from AI. I would like to remind you that sometimes AI generated feedback do have their own limitations. But first of all, let me go through the usefulness very quickly. The feedback generated from ChatGPT actually reminds us of the importance of address forms. How we begin our emails. And it also, the AI generated feedback also shows some useful sentences, like "I'm sorry to bother." Also suggests some useful sentences like "I'm sorry to bother you," or "Would it be possible for me to blah blah blah." These are again examples of polite openness that you can use. But again, AI generated feedback, as I said, do have its limitations. If you just the AI tool only suggested I have a prior commitment, but this is not a specific reason as well. It would be good to try to be more specific. Like for example, in this case, why it is important to catch the train, and why it and what commitment, what the exact commitment are you talking about? In a way that you need to catch the train immediately after class. And your prompt reply, I think Jason mentioned a very good phrase like "at your convenience." If you instead of saying prompt reply, the phrase "please give me your prompt reply" can be a bit pushy to the listener, so the reader, a bit pushy. So we may consider using an alternative to make the tone better. And I would suggest "at your convenience" instead of the phrase prompt response, which the AI tool suggested. "At your convenience" instead of prompt reply. Unfortunately, I have another activity. I've used AI ChatGPT to generate a sample email, but unfortunately, we don't have time to look at it now. Maybe I will give you the handout. This is the email generated by ChatGPT, but mind you, this is not every text can be improved. This is not perfect, and it can be improved. I will give I would suggest that after the workshop, you take a look at the email, and then what I'm going to show you is is my own suggestion. I'm going to distribute it to the in-person participants soon. These are my comments and suggestions given on this email. Maybe after the workshop, you take a look at this email first, and you, again, like what you did in the workshop, you identify the issues and make some amendments. And then you compare your version with my own comments and suggestions. I will leave this as your post-workshop activity. Okay, let me recap very quickly. Developing email competence takes time, and I also like all of you did. I also needed to write a number of email requests. My personal tip for you is to think like a reader. What I mean is try to put yourself into the reader's shoes by thinking, imagine there is a reader. Your professor is reading your email, like what the diagram is showing to you. The professor is reading, imagine you are the professor. When you read the email written by yourself, you can try to try to guess the feelings and the thinking of the professors, how your professor may feel and think when they read your email request. This personal strategy, I think, can help you develop at least some sense of awareness or sensitivity when it comes to using the most appropriate tone in your email requests. So, I would like to close today's workshop by stating the intended learning outcomes again. I hope that by the end of this workshop, you are more able to identify some key features of appropriate email requests, like the use of polite openness and the consideration of the relationship with your participant, and also apply them to writing or revising email requests before you send them to your lecturers or to someone senior than you. So I'm also attaching a list of references that I referred to during the workshop. If you're interested, you can click on the links here to download the articles you would like to read. And finally, just to let you know, I will also be conducting another workshop. It's about coherence and cohesion in writing. Like what the diagram shows, it's about how to connect ideas, connect bits and pieces in a piece of writing, so that all your ideas can form a coherent piece. So it will be on the workshop will be on the 2nd of November. It's from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. So if you're interested in my forthcoming workshop, you're very welcome to attend. The registration details will be available soon. Okay, could you please do the evaluation? I think Bonnie and Cherry will have prepared for that. I'll pass the microphone to them. Okay, thank you to the thank you to the online participants too for listening attentively to my workshop.